country shaped by centuries of colonization, by violent wars, long-lasting political upheaval, and idyllic beauty of its islands. The Philippines offer writers plenty of material to work with. In stories drawn from this complex heritage, Filipino authors stand out for their creative, compelling voices. Culture Trip rounds up seven of the best literary talents to come from the Philippines. So without further ado, I am Kate Palacios and I will be talking about the top 3 of Filipino writers or the famous writers that are present in our Philippine literature. The first author is Nicomedes Joaquin E. Marquez, or also called as Nick Joaquin. He born at May 4, 1917 at Paco, Manila, Philippine Islands, and his occupation is journalist, playwright, and novelist. He died at April 29, 2004 at the age of 86 in San Juan, Metro Manila, Philippines, and his resting place is Libingan ng mga Bayani. Nick Joaquin attended Paco Elementary School and went to Mapa High School for secondary education. However, in his third year, informed his mother that he wanted to drop out because he felt that the classroom was too confined for him and that he learned more outside of it. His mother, Salome, a former teacher, was devastated by the news, but still allowed him to do so. After leaving school, Joaquin worked as apprentice in a bakery in Pasay and later on in the publishing company, which is the TVT or Tribune Vanguardia Taliba. This allowed him a small taste of an industry he would spend most of his life in. He is best known for his short stories and novels in the English language. He also wrote using the pen name, which is Quijano de Manila, and Joaquin was conferred the rank and title of National Artist of the Philippines for Literature. He has been considered one of the most important Filipino writers, along with Jose Rizal and Claro M. Recto. So unlike Rizal and Recto, whose works were written in Spanish, Joaquin's major works were written in English, despite being a native Spanish speaker. So he published a book, which is I mentioned earlier, that is The Woman with Two Novels. So the book published around 1961, and it examines our country's various heritage. It is considered a classic in Philippine literature. It was the recipient of the first Harry Stonehill Award. So the summary of the book, it tells the story of a Filipino elite woman who is hallucinating and is preoccupied with the notion that he has two novels or belly buttons in order to be treated as an extraordinary person. So more background about the book, it begins with the three generation, which tells the story of the Monzon family. So the tale explores the relationship between the three generations and the dynamic that govern this family. So religion, patriarchy, and masculinity dictate most of the family's action, but as a new generation is born, these ideas begin to fade and no longer plague the family. The setting of the story is in the set amid the ruins of Manila, devastated by World War II. So his stories are steeped in the post-colonial anguish and hopes of his era and resonate with the ironic perspective on colonial history of Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Mario Vargas Llosa. So the genre are the following: novel, fiction, historical novel. So let's move forward to the second author, which is Jose Dalisay Jr., or also called as to his pen name, Butch Dalisay. He was born at January 15, 1954 at the age of 67 at Romblon, Philippines. His occupation was writer and nationality is a Filipino, and alma mater is a University of the Philippines and University of Michigan. So the genre of his writings are fiction, poetry, drama, nonfiction, and screenwriting. So to know more about Dalisay, we have his background. So Dalisay is credited with two published novels which are Killing Time in a Warm Place and Soledad's Sister. So both chronicle milestones in Philippines history and annotate them with familiar narratives. So Jose Dalisay Jr. writes a popular online column where he's more commonly known by his pen name. So Dalisay was imprisoned during martial law, and his experiences from this portion of Philippine history are brought to life in his first novel, which is Killing Time in a Warm Place, and his second novel, which is Soledad's Sisters, which tackles the plight of overseas Filipino workers and was shortlisted for the Man Asian Literary Prize in 2007. So, Dalisay has won 16 Palanca Awards and the country's highest prize for literature. So he published a book which is Killing Time in a Warm Place, which is I mentioned earlier, and it was published around 1992. So the story starts with the protagonist, Noel Bulaong, which is he reminiscing about his childhood days in his native land in Kangleong, somewhere in Visayas region. So he is on a flight going home from the US to bury his father. So he reminisces about how he and his friends would pick up coconuts that fell from the tree and take this to a neighbor who would turn this into a coconut candies, which is bukayo. If you knew this one, it is really delicious food. The novel tells the story of every man, woman, and child who lived during the time of martial law under Marcos' orders. So, the internal conflict of every Filipino during these times, whose blood boils at being under the martial law. So, voices suppressed, souls in chain, and spirits crushed, and human desires to stay alive. So, thus, silencing the inner cries that long to be heard, and simply learning to survive. So the setting, it was mentioned earlier, which is, it is land in Kangleong, somewhere in the Visayas region. And the genre of this story is novel. And the last but not the least, the Philippine national hero, which is Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado E. Alonso Rialonda, or also known as Dr. Jose Rizal. He was born on June 19, 1861 at Calamba and died on December 30, 1896. So, cause of death is the execution by firing squad of the Spaniards. So, he was an ophthalmologist, sculptor, painter, educator, former historian, polymath, playwright, and journalist. So, he is a Filipino, and most of his writings are drama, war, and historical fiction. Moreover, Jose Rizal was a prolific writer and was anti-violence. He rather fight using his pen than his might. Rizal's two books are No Limitang Here, or Touch Me Not in English, which he wrote while he was in Berlin, Germany in 1887, and El Filibusterismo, which is The Rebel in English, in Ghent, Belgium in 1891. It exposed the cruelties of the Spanish friars in the Philippines, the defects of the Spanish administration, and the vices of the clergy. These books told about the oppression of the Spanish colonial rule. So, these books are made by Rizal as a markman to the Spanish friars. Dr. Jose Protasio Rizal is the second son and the seventh among the 11 children of Francisco Mercado and Teodora Alonso. So, with his mother as his first teacher, he began his early education at home and continued in Binyan, Laguna, and he entered a Jesuit-run Ateneo Municipal de Manila in 1872 and obtained a bachelor's degree with a highest honors in 1876. He studied medicine at the University of Santo Tomas but had to stop because he felt that the Filipino students were being discriminated by their Dominican teachers or tutors. So he went to Madrid at Universidad Central de Madrid, and in 1885, at the age of 24, he finished his course in philosophy and letters with a grade of excellent. He took graduate studies in Paris, France, and Heidelberg, Germany. He also studied painting, sculpture, and he learned to read and write in at least 10 languages. In 1892, when Rizal returned to the Philippines, he formed La Liga Filipina, a non-violent reform society of patriotic citizens and a forum for Filipinos to express their hopes for reform, to promote progress through commerce, industry, and agriculture, and freedom from the oppressive Spanish colonial administration. On July 6, 1892, he was imprisoned in Fort Santiago on the charge of instigating unrest against Spain. He was exiled to Dapitan in northwestern Mindanao. He remained in exile for 4 years while he was in political exile in Dapitan. He practiced medicine. He established a school for boys, promoted community development projects, and he applied his knowledge in engineering by constructing a system of waterworks in order to furnish clean water to the townspeople. In Dapitan, he also met and fell in love and lived with Josephine Bracken. He published a book which is Noli Me Tangere or Touch Me Not in English. In more than a century since its appearance, Jose Rizal's Noli Me Tangere has become widely known as the great novel of the Philippines. It tells about a passionate love story set against the ugly political backdrop of repression, torture, and murder. The Noli, as it is called in the Philippines, was the first major artistic manifestation of Asian resistance to European colonialism, and Rizal became a guiding conscience and martyr for the revolution that would subsequently rise up in the Spanish province. So it was published around 1887. So the summary of the book was written in Spanish, and it is a sweeping and passionate unmasking of the brutality and corruption of Spanish rule in the Philippines at the year of 1565 till 1898. The story begins at the party to welcome Crisostomo Ibarra back to the Philippines after 7 years of studying in Europe. So his father, Don Rafael, passed away shortly before his return, and Crisostomo soon learns that he died in prison after accidentally killing a tax collector and being falsely accused of other crimes by Father Damaso, so the longtime curate of the church in Crisostomo's hometown of San Diego. So Crisostomo returns to San Diego, and his fiancée Maria Clara joins him there. After the schoolmaster tells him that Father Damaso and the new curate, which is Father Salve, interfere with his teaching, Crisostomo decides to build a new modern school in San Diego. So the characters of the story are Crisostomo Ibarra, Maria Clara, Padre Damaso, Capitan Tiago, and Elias, and the setting was in the 19th century Philippines, specifically at Manila, during latter years of the country as colony of Spain in Asia. So the novel's plot started in the scene when Ibarra visits his betrothed Maria Clara, the beautiful daughter of Captain Tiago and affluent resident of Binondo, Manila. So the genre of the story was mostly a fiction, satire, and it is a novel. So that would be all for my report, and I will pass you to the next reporter. Thank you for listening.